One of them wanted to be the security guy. He claimed he was a security guy.
All right, so welcome to Security Guy Radio. So what's your name?
My name is, oh God, no, the tough questions. You start with that?
Cut. Take it.
Okay.
We actually should play this. Kind of funny.
Yeah. Okay.
Welcome to Security Guy Radio. What's your name?
Mark Berger.
And what do you do?
I'm the president and founder of a company called Securitech. I'm also the chief product officer.
Oh, founder. I like that. That's
Yeah.
cool. All right. And what do you guys do?
We manufacture innovative locking solutions,
All right.
which are crazy things that go on doors.
I bet the first security convention was with locks. Old as the hills, right?
Pretty much.
And they're kind of underrated now because everything's all high tech and digital and blah, blah, blah. But locks, at the end of the day, are what we need to keep things secure.
Right, there are two things. There's always the security part of it and there's always the safety part of it.
Right, right.
So mechanical locks have to go on doors because the safety part has to keep the door latched, nothing else to prevent the spread of fire in many locations. Right. And then the security part, of course, is where all the concentration is, prevent forced entry, access control, and all the elements that go in place.
Now when you say manufacturer, I see, we're going to do a visual in a minute. There's a lot of crazy designs around here. I mean, this is really cool stuff.
Thank you.
And so you come up with a spec sometimes or a design and you say, hey, let's make this, or these are existing models or what?
Well, those are good questions, and the answer to everything you've asked is yes.
Okay.
So as I walk through each product over here, I can probably tell you what was the inquiry that began the creation of the product. Sometimes it's someone who's just asked for one product or one particular function, and we figure that out, and that leads us into several others.
How long have you been in business?
Since 1983. I'd do the math for you, but that would be too complicated.
I just started the Academy in '83. I know the math, believe me. I got
Okay.
the white hair for that. All right, so here's what I haven't been asking people I've met. How do you start a lock business, a cybersecurity business, an IT business? That's a lot of work.
It is.
We think of people as the giant, Tyco, Stanleys, or the corporations. That's a different thing. But you're doing some really good work with some really interesting products. You're design and build. Mm-hmm. How do you get into that?
Well, a couple of things. Anybody that's giant didn't start off as a giant.
That's true.
You always start off at
Yeah.
a certain level, and it generally starts off with an idea. Our nucleus started in the New York City in the early 80s when crime was still a factor.
There were a lot of drugs back then. A lot of cocaine when I was working the streets. A lot of stuff going on.
Okay. And our break-ins were a major factor back then.
Right.
And we started with multi-point locking, with the concept being that if you lock several sides of the door, you can't penetrate or break through the door.
Now, this is really interesting. Did you invent this?
We invented certain versions of this. The idea of multi-point locking, if you watch the movie King Kong, when they slid that bar across those two doors to keep Kong out, that's multi-point locking.
This is a New York thing, okay? Because you don't see these locks in LA, and you see them in all the movies about New York, all the multiple locks, the multiple points and stuff.
Okay.
Now, why is that specific to New York? I mean,
well, let me
or
start with something over here.
Right.
We did them in New York internally inside the door,
right,
where we used to have to send an installer out and chop up the door and put locks in. They look good afterwards, but it was
you mean
fairly
inside
involved.
the door itself?
Right,
the frame, okay.
within the door.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that you don't see these types of things in LA. You probably don't because you'd never see the back side of the door. You just see the outside that has a cylinder where you turn it.
Right.
Okay. This was actually originally designed for an application in LA. Remember I told you before that everything started with the nucleus?
Right.
Those are the only things I remember. We got a call from someone who was designing a door that would be underneath the stadium seats where they were going to be storing sports equipment.
Okay, I know exactly what you're talking about, right?
And they didn't, so it was an odd shaped little door,
right,
and they didn't want to have people breaking in and stealing the sports equipment. And if he only locked on one side of the door, they'd take a crowbar and go through the door. So we wanted to lock top and bottom. He'd heard about our locks. We'd done trade shows and we were known. The problem was his door was not going to be a regular 1 3/4 door that we normally work with. It was just going to be a steel panel. So he was wondering, how can he install our lock on a steel panel? So I started thinking about it, and I said, well, you know what, if I took some aluminum tubes and we bolted the tubes to the door, then you don't actually need a door. We can mount the lock inside the tube. And from that concept or idea of satisfying his need of putting it inside the tube, we built a steel housing, smaller channels, and we took a lock that had been inside the door and turned it into a surface-mounted lock.
Yeah.
So from New York to LA, and now every place in between, if you've bought a cell phone, the odds are it's been stored inside a stock room protected by one of these multi-point locks.
Interesting. Really interesting. So you're nationwide?
Yep.
How do you distribute your business?
Through traditional contract hardware distributors, through locksmith distributors, through specialty loss prevention distributors. There's a special channel that deals with those folks. Systems integrators.
Now, we're not going to see your stuff at Builder's Emporium. I'm dating myself.
Correct.
That's old school.
Right. Right.
But,
so we don't sell into the do-it-yourself
and from the
channel.
business point of it, why I've seen other manufacturers that do it that way. Why do they choose the distribution you choose? This is a business
It's a logical question. Generally, our products are not the simplest products to install that a homeowner should really do
I
with
see.
themselves.
Okay, makes sense.
This is a one step above putting furniture together from IKEA.
Now, do you use? You have the locks, and I got to get my terms right. The lock is, and then there's a cylinder.
There you go. Okay. It's a good question.
Yeah. Difference.
We don't manufacture cylinders.
Okay.
So one of the reasons that we don't sell directly to any end user is that you'll always need something from someone else to make our lock work.
That's that's good clarification.
Right. So whether it's an access control system which sends a signal, or whether it's a regular keyed lock, that key control has to come from someone else.
Right.
So Securitech manufactures the locking element, and the cylinder is going to come from a third party.
And the cylinder can be, can you handle things like, what's the high-end one?
Medico.
Medico, yeah. So
exactly.
that it all fits whatever you're making.
Exactly. Right.
So manufacturing of a lock, what goes into that concept? And the reason I ask, and I can't remember all my terms, but when I was at the studios, I was in charge of security, so I had to go out and vet, look at people, look at companies, take bids and that kind of thing. And then one day they said, I want to put in Medico keyways and mortise locks, and they said, no, it's too expensive. We're going to value that out.
Right.
So they put in the cheapest Yale locks or something, right? And then, of course, the CEO got locked in his office for about 5 hours, and that was a big problem because it failed, right?
Right.
So what's your feeling on quality versus pricing? Is there a difference in a functionality of an inexpensive lock set opposed to a more expensive lock set?
Right.
And what goes into those components?
Those are good questions. If someone's buying our lock set, they're not buying a value engineered piece.
Okay.
What they're looking for is durability.
We don't want somebody getting in. Nobody's getting in your door. That's the idea.
Well,
the design.
there are certain things. There's code compliance, so that I can add security to the door and yet exit in a single motion.
Okay.
So remember, I'm going to always bring everything back to the safety side because we engineer in the safety side. So if someone's not interested in code compliance and are wanting to risk people's lives, yeah, they can buy inexpensive things and throw a $4 slide bolt on the door and consider it security.
Right.
Someone could die behind it, but you know what?
I think most people don't think that way. They think, oh, it's a lock. It's going to get me in or out. Not necessarily. You're right.
Right.
We call that fail-safe or fail-secure if it's in electronic locks in a broadcast facility.
It's very tricky because you've got two sides of a door. You've got your ingress and your egress. So your ingress from the street side, you always want to be fail-secure in most cases, so that with the loss of power, somebody can't just walk in. Your interior, I don't really use the term fail-safe. I use the term free exiting. And the reason I use free exiting is that it has nothing to do with power, it has nothing to do with locking. If I'm on the inside, I have to be able to exit freely at all times.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Now, on a stairwell for re-entry, because you asked, in most jurisdictions it's every fourth floor, in some jurisdictions every floor. If I'm in a stairwell and I'm trying to exit in the event of a fire, and I've got locked doors from the stairwell, every fourth floor typically, that stairwell door on the ingress side has to allow me back onto a floor. So that would be fail-safe, where with the loss of power, that would become unlocked.
Yeah.
Some jurisdictions, that's every floor. The reason they do every fourth floor is that if I'm inside the space, I never have to move more than 2 floors up or 2 floors down to be able to exit back onto the building.
I was always torn between that, and my emotion between fail-safe and fail-secure was always decided by the fire department, but only the particular inspector, because 1 week it's this way and 1 week it's the other. That happens, right, unfortunately.
It's tricky. I chair the Builders Hardware Manufacturers Association Codes and Government Affairs Committee, so I deal with a lot of AHJs, authorities having jurisdictions, a lot of fire marshals, things like that.
I used to be for fail secure, so you can't go back in the building if everything goes to crap and the zombies start attacking. We don't want the zombies coming in. But now with active shooters, let me get your thoughts on that. I'm all for egress. I want the first responders to get in any way they think is tactically safe and handle that situation in a shooting situation.
Right.
Do you find a trend in the industry where people are starting to think, you know what, maybe I ought to keep it open?
School locking, if you've got an hour, I'll come in and I'll do a show with you.
Oh, you should, absolutely.
It's a very big topic, a very hot topic right now. Okay, there are a couple of things about school locking. Number one, schools are now castles and moats, which means that the perimeter of the school should have one door for entry, and that's the primary location into a school.
Right.
Okay. First
they
responders.
Should. We still don't see it.
Well, you see it very often right now. The first responders, typically in a community, will have the key to enter through that door.
Okay.
If they don't, every first responder has a key that's about 4 foot tall that they will use to enter through the glass that's on the side of the door, or to separate the door to come in.
Are they using Knox boxes that were traditionally by fire departments, or police utilizing those?
Correct. So those, so they have pretty fast access in.
All right.
The need for speed, which you've talked about in a school, is not so much for first responders to enter. The need for speed is the ability to lock the classroom down as quickly as possible.
Okay, that's a good point.
So if I'm a teacher, I should not have to go and hunt for my key in my purse, wherever it is in the room. I should not have to then have to try to run to the door and insert my key into the door under duress.
Right.
My goal, get my kids to a safe haven within the classroom and lock the door as quickly as possible.
Now one thing, and I teach active shooter response and prevention, all that kind of stuff, right? And one thing that people always forget about, and you just hit on it, which is the duress, is that if you lock your door like this every single morning and that's your routine, when somebody starts shooting, that's not your routine.
There is no routine.
There is no routine unless you train for it, right? So,
even if you train for it,
well, you have to train a lot.
The best trained people,
yeah.
How much time is going to elapse between your training and, God forbid, an event
Well,
happens?
that's what I mean. By my definition of training, it's ongoing. It's all the time. We do drills, right?
Right.
Now, what do your locks do that can help with that situation?
Okay.
I love this one here where there's just a flip, and if you're on the inside of the classroom and I'm flipping it, I'm secure in that classroom.
Well, believe it or not, this is on computer classrooms in New York City. When we talked about break-ins in the 1980s, one of our big activities was, it's an interesting story, Microsoft and IBM got together to donate classrooms to the New York City school system. They delivered their first load on a Friday afternoon. They put them in a room, prepared to install them on Monday morning. Want to finish the story?
Yeah. They didn't disappear, did they?
Oh, shocking.
Good heavens.
Yeah, there was not a single one. So Microsoft and IBM said, before we provide you with any more computers, you have to give us a reasonable insurance that they're going to be installed in classrooms and not disappear. So we did multi-point locking, retrofitting to existing classroom doors in the New York school system for that purpose. Now, fast forward 30 years later, the concern is not protecting the computers. The concern is protecting the students inside the right. So there, the issue is the need for speed. And if you want, I have this product I can show you that will talk about the instant ability to lock the door, yet provide single motion egress.
And intuitive, because a 5-year-old ought to be able to figure out that, listen, if the teacher's down, I got to be able to do it.
The teacher may not be the closest person to the door. You want someone to have it intuitive and easy to do, but not ordinary and normal that it's like their lock at home where they would do it all the time by accident.
Now, what are school shootings, of course, the highest priority because of children, right? But we get these kind of things in workplaces as well. What are corporations or businesses doing differently in the lock business now because of this potential threat?
Right. Workplace threats are all, again, the same castle and moat idea where you're segregating areas. We grew up, I remember going to Kennedy Airport and you could almost walk to the gate with people that were departing.
True. Right. Whole different
that doesn't exist anymore, right? Think of how many movies that have to change the ending now because you can go run to the gate at the last moment.
That's right.
Okay?
That's true. That's true.
Whole different lifestyle.
That's right.
Now. Okay, so airports became the first secured areas. Offices are being secured. We're going to see levels of security in malls. We're seeing it in movie theaters now because of shootings. It's a different world. We have to adapt to it, protecting, but also maintaining life safety and exiting. So you're seeing things going on. We worked with the U.S. Postal Service.
They're the greatest, those guys.
Yeah, they are so on top of the situation, and they had to deal with active shooter situations long before anybody else in society. And their goal was to protect the environment from ingress, but make sure that if you were anywhere in one of their facilities and you heard something going on, your nearest exit was free and clear and you could exit out.
Now, I can't remember what it was called, but it was the crash bar that had a delayed opening.
Right.
Gives you 5 seconds.
There's plenty of delayed egress. That's a code.
And that's still okay to use.
It's code allowed,
okay.
yeah.
I had that installed at one of the studios, and we had an incident where people had to get out, and when they couldn't get out in the panic, they figured it didn't work. They didn't wait 5 seconds. 5 seconds.
Well, there's signage. Well, it's usually 15 or 30, and
Yeah,
you probably had a 30-second back then. In an emergency, 30 seconds is an eternity.
Long time, yeah.
Right. So there are a couple of things. Number one, where you use emergency egress and you have delayed egress, code requires signage on the door.
Right.
Code requires an audible countdown, either by beeping, and there's some that
Oh, I don't
actually
think we
do
had
numbers.
that. It's interesting. Okay.
You were in the early days
Yeah.
when you were doing it, things like that. So the
Those are
codes
still popular, though?
The delayed egress is used, and it's allowed in many locations. Interesting locations where it's used, Alzheimer's wards.
Oh, of course, that's a
patients.
perfect application,
Yeah.
right? Because there's
Right.
no emergency other than them.
Right.
Well, it could be, but them leaving because of their condition.
Right.
Yeah.
Retail is a large application with delayed egress because people
Yeah.
use what I call alternate cashier locations, where there's no cashier. So they decide they'll mail in a check later and run out the side door.
Now, these are, I'm looking at them, and we're going to take some pictures in a minute. These are good old-fashioned, all-American steel,
Right.
impenetrable, you know,
Heavy
really-
duty.
Heavy, right.
Right.
But are there electronic components in some of these
There
things
are-
nowadays?
Essentially, what we've taken is any lock that we have with multiple point locking
Yep.
can also be released to provide entry through an access
They
control
make
system.
me nervous because power goes out, the battery dies, whatever. Are you locked and out of luck if it's in the
Let's
lock
go
mode?
back to what we taught you before. Free exiting at all times.
No, I get it on a mechanical lock,
but fail
on-
secure.
But on an
the
electronic
outside.
lock, how do you
But
do
our
it?
electronic locks are all just releases of mechanical applications.
Oh, so it's the spring load is
The mechanical locking is always there. Electromagnetic locks have the issue that they're dependent upon power
like
for
mag
the
lock.
door holding force.
Do you make mag locks, by the way?
We don't. We can supply some with our products.
Right.
Securitech, generally as a company, if somebody else makes it, we don't.
Yeah.
We may use elements of it,
Right.
but we don't produce those elements.
Right. This is really fascinating.
Thank you.
And it's back to basics, right?
Pretty much, there's simple principles.
Oh, high tech, blah, blah,
Right.
blah. You got to have a good lock set and make it work.
Right,
Let's
but
take a
the-
little quick break and we'll take a look at some of the
Sure,
other stuff.
that'd be great.
All right,
Thank you.
Great.
So what we're going to talk about now is what you referenced before, which is classroom locking. And really what it comes down to is if I had a child in a classroom and I had a teacher who was supposed to protect them, 3 words come to mind. And those 3 words are need for speed.
Right.
I want my teacher to be able to lock the classroom door as quickly as possible while my child is being ushered over to a safe haven in the classroom, and all of this should happen within 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay.
An average shooting is about 3 minutes, and you got to move fast.
Right. And they're going to go, from an opportunity point of view, is essentially all locks are, and all we're doing is we're in delay mode, right? If you can't break into one place, you're going to move someplace else. Our goal is to make it inconvenient for you to break into one place. Similarly with the classroom, with the need for speed, what we want the teacher to be able to do, and I don't know if you can see this over here, I'll turn this around. This is our QID lock set, and what we have is a traditional classroom lock set where the key is used to lock and unlock the outside lever, and that's usually what a classroom function lock is. But what we've added is below the lever a red button.
Oh, that's interesting. Can you maybe turn that a little flatter? We can take a little close on it.
Okay, like that?
Yeah.
I'm not that strong, I can't hold it for this long. Okay.
There you go. All right, interesting.
Okay, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to press the red button, and it's going to do 2 things. It's going to project a deadbolt, and it's going to lock the outside lever.
Oh, interesting.
Now, the idea behind this lock came so that if the door is open, I'm the teacher, my goal is to concentrate on students and move them into a safe area. What I'm going to do is come to the door, put my hand on the handle, not even look, bring my thumb down, press the red button, and lock the door. So in one motion, as long as I pass the door, all I have to do is get my hand on the lever.
You can almost be jogging past that door and grab that thing.
As fast as you can.
Yeah.
Now, my belief is that schools, just as we have training drills where we get on an airplane, right, how to buckle a seatbelt, training drills when you take a cruise, you go out, they have the muster.
Right.
You have a training drill when you go to a movie theater now, because before the movie starts, they're identifying where the exits are.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
After they've told you to turn off your cell phone and buy popcorn, They're telling you how to get out in the event of an emergency.
Right.
So that's all coming out right now.
And, you know, it's helpful because that subtle thing, and you see a couple movies a month, you remember it.
Right.
It works. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
So we're accustomed now to having safety drills. You can call them security drills, they're really safety drills. Same thing is the first day of school, every student should be taught that in the event of an emergency, your responsibility is to go, who's ever closest to the door, used to call him the hall monitor, right? The kid that was closest to the door, right? Whoever's closest to the door, don't wait for the teacher to go to the door. If you hear that school alarm go off, you go and you press the red button to
and
lock
what
the
kid
door.
doesn't like to push buttons?
Kids
It's a
love to
no-brainer.
push buttons.
That's right.
Now, part of that drill, because it's important that you say that, is the first day of school, you line every student up and every student presses that button. So they all have the opportunity to do it and they all know what's being done.
Right.
Now the other part of that is why it's so important is number one, is if I was a kid, I'd spend the whole year waiting for my chance to press that red button.
Yeah, no, it's true.
So there I've done it the first day. The second is that you learn that you have to really press the button. You can't just touch it. And when you press the button, that's what locks it.
Right.
But if you just brush up against it, it's not going to project.
How young a child could push that, do you think?
They can.
Grade school? I mean,
Grade
way
school,
down-
right. I don't know if kindergarten kids are quite the age.
Second
but
grade or whatever,
second
yeah,
grade,
all right.
third grade should be
Makes
able
sense,
to do
right.
it. And some first grade kids are going to be big enough to be able to do it as
Right.
well. It's not too hard. We don't use a turn piece that would be normal like they'd see on their home lock.
Right.
It's a very specific red button below the lever. That's the key to making this thing operate properly.
It's now that you've said it this way, I get it. I would have gone with make it familiar, but you need to make this special.
Right.
It has to be super special.
Right.
And important so the kids go, hey, we got a problem, I got to act
Right.
accordingly.
So
Yeah.
red always detects emergency.
Right.
If it was normal, it'd be too easy for the kids to flip it over and say, hey, I didn't do that. No, you know.
Exactly, right.
Here, that's an emergency, and you treat it like the emergency alarm in the school, where you let them know there's a penalty if you've pressed this at the wrong
Now,
time.
is this your design?
That's our design, yes.
It's brilliant. Is it patented?
It's patent pending.
Patent pending, excellent.
That's what we do, yeah.
It's a Security Guard Radio exclusive. I like to find these products that are like vertical and niche and like really
Okay.
specialized. That's a brilliant.
That's, well, the entire Securitech company is all about verticals and niches and special applications.
Yeah, this is
That's what
fabulous.
we do.
Now, what is something like that going to cost me?
List price on this item is $770.
That seems pretty reasonable to me. For what you get out of it, especially.
Yep.
And
And it retrofits into the exact existing mortise opening in the school.
well,
in the
that's
door.
good because that could be an extra expense, right? If it's if you get retrofitted.
Correct.
Explain to people what a mortise lock is because
Okay,
that's a
right.
term you hear all the time.
Right, for door folks, the way to tell what type of lock you have in your door, open your door sideways. If you see an 8-inch opening, you've got a mortise lock. Comes from the old terms in wood doors where they used to have to mortise out a pocket
Yeah.
to put the lock inside the door. That pocket was called a mortise.
Oh, okay.
So this is called a mortise lock. The alternative would be a cylindrical lock where you'd see a small 2 3/4 inch
Oh, the
faceplate.
throw bolt. Yep.
Well, not for the deadbolt, but
Oh.
for the latch.
Oh, okay.
Almost like a key and knob lock like you'd see it in your home.
Right.
That would be the other type of lock that's in the school. And we have a QID solution for that as well, where we install a secondary lock and a different trim on the inside. So we have solutions in that space
So here's
too.
my pet peeve on this sort of stuff with schools. Why isn't this? I hate to say a law because I don't like a lot of laws, even though I
Right.
was a cop, right? But really, for kids, why isn't this mandatory? Why isn't this in every school in the country? It's just a no-brainer. And I know a lot of security, right? This
Right.
seems like one of the best solutions I've ever seen.
Thank you.
Simple and mechanical. And by the way, is that going to break? No. It's not, right?
Oh, hope it's not.
Electric
Okay.
lock could break. There's
Well,
power.
it's a
This
question of how our society values things when we get around to it.
Yeah.
So hopefully we get to things before the horse leaves out of the barn. Securitech as a company likes to be reactive, likes to come up with solutions that help prevent the next issue that comes up. We work very well with school districts. We will customize products to meet their needs. Security is not a very fast-moving
No, it just
response that people have. Purchasing products takes a life cycle. School districts are going to complain about being terribly underfunded in many different priorities, and
Yeah.
we respect that and we understand that. But Securitech as a company is the go-to for innovation and technology, and we're very proud that when they built the new school in Sandy Hook, Connecticut, it was our locks that were selected
Oh,
for those
fabulous.
classroom
In the
doors.
bid, before you start breaking
It was
ground.
specified.
Yeah,
The
specified, yeah.
security consultant worked on developing something very specific, not the red button, the Connecticut requirement is every door locked continuously.
Right.
So we've come up with a solution for them that works with some of the other systems
Now,
they put together.
You could put that in continuous lock on the outside, but I assume it's open unless you push the red button.
Right, so it works hopefully 100% of the time, otherwise 99.99% of the time, this should work like a regular classroom lock. And classroom locks work where you turn the key and they lock and unlock the outside lever.
So what do you find is the standard? I used to recommend that every classroom keep the door locked from the outside, and of course they all come back with, well, what if I have to go get my coffee and I don't have my keys, and it's inconvenient and I got to stop when the kid comes from the hall to bring in a pass.
Very few school districts will have all their classroom doors locked
Still
all the time.
they don't, right? It's bizarre.
Still they don't.
It's one of the safest things they can do to delay somebody. The Virginia Tech shooter, right?
I'm sorry?
The Virginia Tech guy, the shooter, right, in the school?
Yeah.
The one class he didn't get into is the one where after the guys got shot, they went and locked it, and he shook the door and went to the next one, right? Yeah.
That's where we talk
So
about
you're still
the need
finding
for
that
speed.
standard. You're still finding the standard
need
of,
for
well, keep it open for now, and that kind of thing.
Right.
Well, at least if this product is here, they can lock it and be safe.
There are alternative products out there. There are products being created that respect the need for speed. For a school district with unlimited funds, we have a version of the QID where the teacher could wear a pendant around the neck.
Oh, I was just going to ask you electronically.
You wouldn't even have to approach the door.
Right.
You just press the button, and if you want to watch this one over here.
Oh, here, let me see if I can get that a little closer. Hold on.
Okay. When I press the button, I have to line this up. Well, that should have happened. Oh, someone put this upside down.
Oh, all right.
I apologize.
That's right, go ahead.
So now imagine someone's walked out, bolt automatically projects.
Interesting.
So I will do that again with the strike plate in the right position. So here we're looking at the frame as if the door wasn't there. Teacher has the pendant, presses the button,
That's cool.
automatically projects
Now,
outward.
could you put this on a network and have one
You could have
person hit
one
a button, lock the whole
lockdown.
school for the
Yep.
whole school?
One button lockdown for the school. Yeah.
See, simple solution.
It's a simple solution, it's an expensive solution. So we've seen this being used in some private schools, some other locations like that, but for fairly large school districts, it's probably way out of their budget.
Yeah, cost prohibitive, and my kids went to private school. If they need something, they asked their parents for money, and the parents either gave it to them, or guess what? Sometimes they said, no, we're not going to give it to you. But
I'll do my standard line.
not a rich school either, by the way. It was private.
Every
rich.
parent will tell you that their greatest treasure, their greatest value is their children.
That's right.
Who's the least expensive employee that you have?
What, at school?
No. In generally, if you're a homeowner, the least expensive employee that you have. I'll jump too close. Your babysitter.
Oh, okay, right.
So your most valuable possession
Yeah, that's true.
is now being protected by your least valuable.
He's the one that's cheaper. Yeah, that's true. Well, I was in the guard business for a long time, right?
Yeah.
And you want me to guard your gold-plated, widget, and you only want to pay the guard $9 an hour. Really? I don't get it, right?
That's how things
That's
work.
how it works. Yeah, it is kind of weird. This is really, really good. Anything else you want to show me?
I think we're good over here on this.
All right.
Okay. We'd like to go through at some point our electric locking, but that takes a fair amount of time. So.
Well, you got. You're at 30 minutes. We can.
Okay.
It's up to you. You probably want to get back to some sales too. So.
Yeah, I've actually got to jump to
all right, so this is great.
Event. So we'll start with this. We'll show you one other item if we can.
All right, real quick. All right.
Okay, real quick. Okay. All right, who's the beer guy?
Yes, is that a beer lock?
Okay, we got a beer lock. Okay. All right. So we'll do one final product.
All right.
And I actually have to take it to an event.
All right, go ahead.
So let me turn off the theme song. Okay. So this is our Bluetooth controlled electric release trim.
Oh, Bluetooth. Cool.
Yep.
All right.
All right. So I'm going to ask you to hold the mic for me for a second while I demonstrate this. Okay. So basically what I do is, what I'm going to do is take my phone, open up my application, and then the dark green door key is the door that's nearest by. I press the button, and I can open the door.
That's awesome.
Okay.
Battery powered locally, or you need
No, it's
power?
hardwired.
Hardwired, all right.
Okay. But the software is by a company called EasyKey. It's their VizPin software. So Securitech, as I mentioned before, we don't make access control systems, and we don't provide cylinders, but we've teamed with the good folks at VizPin to be able to release the doors electrically and instantly.
That is really cool. How much does that cost?
That's about a $1,000 list price for the hardware and the release.
I'd buy one for my house, except you could go through my balsa wood door. It wouldn't,
Right.
wouldn't serve a purpose.
Securitech is not really in the residential side of the street. We're more in the industrial. Here is a location where if you want to add credentials to people and provide them the ability to enter,
Right.
you never have to see them. They download the app, and you can, once they're online, you can then assign them time zones. They could be for an hour, a week, a month, a day.
SPG is doing a Bluetooth lock. So
Right.
you arrive and your phone's your key to your hotel.
Right. So this would be for other applications in that sense.
Right.
Great.
Mark, it's beautiful. Thanks for coming in, Security
Sure,
Guy.
thank
Really
you for the
appreciate
time.
it. Thanks a lot.
Okay.